What are we expecting to hear from Scholz later today?
Yeah, Tom, really sort of day of reckoning for the German Chancellor, who just coming after a week after he dissolved basically his government by firing the finance minister, Christian Lindner, now goes before Parliament to do a 30-minute speech where he's going to lay out sort of his plans and what sort of why he thinks, first of all, to address the political crisis, but also sort of to have a platform to talk about what he would like to do. The problem is going to be that is then going to be followed by a 2-hour debate, which is going to be intensely fiery, which really speaks to some of the political and economic issues here in Germany. What he will focus on is likely sort of make some of the same refrains that he has made over the last sort of few months in his disagreements with the finance minister, saying that basically Germany is now hamstrung by these sort of very stringent borrowing limits. This is something he wants to do away with, the debt brake, saying that he wants to bring the economy back to life with more economic support. But the real contrast between what he is saying and what the CDU is saying is he wants to do it in a much more equitable fashion. That means that he does not want to cut back pensions, does not want to cut back benefits. But for many Germans, there is a sort of sense of weariness with this three-party coalition that has failed to be able to sort of resolve its differences for the last year and a half, particularly with Donald Trump sort of standing there on the horizon, where Olaf Scholz has made sort of no secret of his favoring of Joe Biden, and the fact that it took them almost a week to speak on the phone after he was elected, that does not bode particularly well.
And that may be part of the strategy, potentially, of his opposition partner, Friedrich Merz, then, of the CDU. You can't really call them partners, I guess. Opposition party leader. How is Merz looking to position himself leading into this vote, Ollie?
Yeah, so really thinking about Friedrich Merz, who is by far the sort of favored candidate here, and we should say that, you know, sort of Germany is a very sort of tends to lean very closely towards the CDU. There was that sort of short gap in the polling when the actual last election was held, when the SPD managed to win, but really the CDU has been #1 in the polls really for the last 5 years, generally speaking. Where he will be sort of distinct from Angela Merkel is this is a much more conservative figure than Angela Merkel was on a number of different issues, and he spoke yesterday, and I'll just give you some of the summary of some of the issues that he's going to prioritize. #1, he says, is major tax reform. That is step #1. He wants to be a low-tax chancellor, particularly for corporates. A lot of companies are going to like that sort of thing. He wants to cut benefits, unemployment benefits. Pensions are another thing that are going to be a focus. This is really where Scholz wants to be distinct from Merz. He also wants to cut out bureaucracy and regulation. I wonder, Tom, have we heard that before from the German government? Yes, everyone says they want to cut bureaucracy, and yet there is still a ton of bureaucracy. This is something that he says he really wants to take on, and he's been much more restrictive on migration. This is a sort of great difference between him and Angela Merkel, and here he hopes to cannibalize some of the vote from the AfD, from the extreme right and the extreme left, who have really been very concerned with the issue of migration. He's much harder on those sorts of issues, but he also wants to boost defense spending, more support for Ukraine. He says that there should not be all these limits that we're imposing on Ukraine in terms of these sort of missiles striking within Russia. He wants to start, for example, deliveries of those Taurus missiles to the Ukrainians. Plus, he wants to boost defense spending from $50 billion to $80 billion. Of course, Tom, as ever, the question is, how are you going to pay for it? And that'll bring us sort of the main issue here, which will be the debt brake, and that will be the sort of really interesting political debate in Germany going forward.